In 3, 2, 1. Damn it!
I just thought of that.
Don't do it
I
again.
won't do it again.
3, 2, 1. I hate you so much.
I never thought to do that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the best and the worst of question mark. I don't know. I still don't have a title.
You don't have a title yet?
No.
You got to get your branding right. What are we going to hashtag this if we don't know the title?
I don't
Best
know.
worst? Hashtag best worst? Worst best?
It's too general. You need to have our names in it or something. It's gotta be more branded.
Okay, can we come up with a hashtag that fills all 140 characters?
Sure.
Christine and Rob's best and the worst video regarding the topic of video games
YouTube
and publishers
stuff.
YouTube series every week. Tune in. Thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna go back and double check if that's 140 characters.
Okay, great.
Anyway, thank you for joining me again, Rob. This is a series where we talk about the best and the worst games of anything, really, of franchises, developers, topics. Today's a topic.
Mm-hmm.
And today's episode is going to be about Star Wars games, because it's just a very apropos thing to talk about, because we're in Star Wars Mania currently.
And it's going to be every year forever, time eternal.
So we're just going to do this video over and over again every year.
There are plenty of games to talk about, so that's a good thing.
So I was able to pick mine pretty quickly. I know you're struggling a little bit.
I'm struggling with my worst, but I think I have one.
Okay.
I think it was struggling with because I feel like it could be too easy to pick like some lousy iPhone game that's got Star Wars branding on it and call it the worst. But that's not that's too easy. Sure. I wanted one that really had meaning behind why I thought it was the worst.
Right. And again, to preface, we kind of have a rule that you actually had to have played it, because it would be too easy to just pick titles that we know are probably bad. So, how about you start off
with
this time with your worst?
It's my worst. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think this is what I settled on. It was actually, really tough because there are just so many good games out there. And I don't know how, Christine, you're approaching it, but like my approach was like, what is the best and worst game that is a Star Wars game, as opposed to like best and worst game that happens to be about Star Wars. So the gameplay,
I think you need to explain that.
The gameplay and the design, that all sort of took a back seat to like the games that made me feel like I was in Star Wars the best and the worst. And so for my worst, I think I'm gonna settle on Bounty Hunter for the GameCube. And I think that is my worst. I've heard of so many even worse Star Wars games that I've managed to avoid and never play. But for me, I think that was my worst because that was like the height of the prequels, and a large part of it took place on Coruscant, if I recall correctly, and you play as Jango Fett, and I feel like it took everything about the prequels that didn't feel like Star Wars and put it into a video game. And I don't remember the game itself being that bad. It was like a third-person shooter adventure. You fly around and stuff. But just by playing Jango Fett, who is like such a shallow character, who doesn't have a lot going for him, and playing during this timeline, which I believe it was made to sort of promote or tie in with Episode 2, which I consider to be the worst Star Wars film ever. It was like a concentration of everything I didn't like about the franchise in one package. And it made me really not enjoy it very much, despite being good in terms of gameplay. I get the appeal of Boba Fett, and I can understand that there'd be some residual appeal of Jango Fett. He's a cool-looking character. He's got sweet armor.
He's not the same, though.
He's sort of like the Star Wars version of the Man with No Name from, like, Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
Right.
Like, he's just, like, tough and Spartan-esque. But as far as a campaign for video, I just didn't care about him. I just don't care,
Yeah.
So it was a game that I really just didn't put my heart into, and I had to like dig through my memories to even remember playing it. And then once that came back, it was like, it was like a revolting sort of trip back down memory lane.
Wow. I'm sorry I put you through that. I didn't own the game. I'm pretty sure I borrowed it from a friend and didn't really get to play it. I either borrowed it or I rented it. I think I might have rented it back in the day when Blockbuster was a thing. And I remember not really... I feel like there was a lot of hype before it came out. Like, people were excited about the idea of playing, like, a bounty hunter. But then I kind of agree with you. Like, the movies weren't good, and then that kind of affects your feelings towards the game. And I don't know, Boba Fett's just much better to me as a character, and obviously he's more iconic, so I think people would have cared more about him.
I'll also say, like, I love the idea of Coruscant, and I like that, you know, there are ideas circulating around the planet, but the idea is near impossible to manifest in a video game, and on the GameCube no less, even less so. So it was just like really disappointing.
So my worst is a really old game that some of you might not even know, on a system that some of you might not even know. So back in the day, when Nintendo came out with their Game Boy, it was a few years later, because the first Game Boy, black and white, right? So I think it was around the Game Boy Color.
Green and yellow.
Yeah. Sorry, there were colors. I think it was on the Game Boy Color era. Sega said, oh man, we gotta do handheld too. We gotta like put something out. And that was the Game Gear, which was not very good. And unfortunately was the one that we had growing up. My brother actually had it.
Ran on 2-car batteries, I believe.
It was, oh my god, it was terrible. Yeah, well, that's kind of true, actually. That thing used to die so fast. Yeah. And we had the Star Wars game that's literally called Star Wars. There's no, like, subtitle to it. And it was the hardest, most frustrating game in the universe. It was like a side-scrolling platformer that just... Like, there are good side-scrolling platformers from, like, back in the day, like Mega Man. Like, it was a hard game, but if you knew what you were doing and you have the timing, you could get through it, and you can beat those games. It is possible with some skill. Star Wars, you could have all the skill in the world, and you'd still die repeatedly. And you would, like, lose characters. It was really weird. Like, Leia would die, she'd be dead, and then like Luke would die and he'd just be dead. And it was terrible, and the graphics were terrible, and the Game Gear was terrible. So I just have really bad memories of that game. And maybe if I went back to it and played it today, I'd be like, oh, this isn't the worst. But I think in my, what year did it come out? 1997. So I think in my 11-year-old mind, it's just, like, it traumatized me. It just traumatized me.
I would like to think there is, like, a Game Gear loyalist who is seething right now at the idea that you said it's the worst. She's like, you don't understand? Sega was ahead of its time. It was the most vibrant handheld screen ever.
Yeah, no. But that's my worst.
Okay, enough of the negative, though.
Right.
Like, we gotta focus on the positive. Should I talk about my favorite?
Yeah, let's talk about your favorite.
I think my best Star Wars game, and this will, if you don't believe me before, this will definitely prove that I'm not taking gameplay mechanics into account or design. Because
you did say you could argue this as a worst.
I could argue this is not only the worst Star Wars game, just the worst game. Is Star Wars Galaxies, the really rough MMO by Sony Online Entertainment that came out while we were in high school.
Yep.
So here's the truth about that. It didn't start as a Star Wars game. It was originally just an MMO Sony was working on, and then they got the license to Star Wars, and so they changed it really quickly.
I think I remember that because my brother played it a lot, and I remember him talking about that.
Here's the thing. As a game, it was an awful game. It was an awful MMO, an awful game. There were no quests. There was not a lot you could do. For the first couple of months, you couldn't have speeder bikes. You had to just run everywhere. The best profession you could be for combat was like Terraskasi, which is like martial arts essentially. So it's like a Star Wars game where everyone's like doing jump kicks and stuff and running around.
And that feels really Star Wars to you?
It didn't, but here's the thing. It was the most socially equipped MMO, not only at the time, but I would still argue to this day. The emotes that they threw in there, the fact that they had a lot of non-combat professions. You could be an architect. The crafting system was incredible, and I think still unmatched to this day. You could buy houses, and you could group those houses, and you could make player towns. Like, you think of an MMO now, and it's such a well-crafted theme park-like space, but this was an area where you could just find a plot of land and plop down a house and start a town and get a town hall, and you could decorate your houses. It was essentially a Star Wars dollhouse.
Second Life?
It sounds like Second Life dollhouse. And so with right community, and I felt lucky because I was part of, I was a nerd. I went into the role-playing community, Starsider. That was like the unofficial one. And so you had a community that was making all sorts of house rules for combat to make it playable, and coming up with storylines that weren't in the game so that something was going on. And so that made it more of an immersive, because now not only was I playing a Star Wars story in a Star Wars universe, it was like my Star Wars story. And I played with that character on and off for like 3 years or so.
My favorite Star Wars game is Knights of the Old Republic, which is what bred the MMO, really.
What a twist. I've never heard of that one before.
The first one, even though I did play the second one, and while, yes, I agree, very glitchy, I still enjoyed the story. I just, obviously it was an unpolished game. But I really love Knights of the Old Republic. I think it's a fan favorite of a lot of people's. It was BioWare who worked on it. It's kind of almost feels like pre-Mass Effect. You know what I mean? Like, you can tell that they were getting their whole dialogue system down, and all of that, like, was in those games, definitely. And you can tell that they kind of evolved from there. But, like, you and I were talking about previously, how many years is, like, 10,000 years before...
Years or something?
Before... You get so mad about that. Before the original trilogy. So it's set way back. And if anyone hasn't played it, I don't want to like give away twists and stuff, but there's some really great twists in the game. I have to say that ending was, at the time, maybe not now, but at the time, a very shocking ending for me, and I was like super into it. Yeah. Again, this was the first time we saw like those dialogue options that BioWare ever did, and I really liked that. You felt like you were more in control of the characters. The first time you can decide, do I really want to go on the light side or the dark side? And you had your companions, much like Mass Effect. In fact, some of the voice actors carried over from that game into Mass Effect. And I loved it. Something about running around, the lightsaber, and like I liked the Force. I liked how you use like all of your Force abilities, I guess. I don't know.
It was also the first RPG, at least in my memory, where like your actions affected what your companions thought of you.
Yes.
And that really stuck out to me, because I remember before that, it was just like video games existed in a vacuum and I could do whatever I want and I wouldn't feel bad ever. And then, you'd have companions who are like, I'm not digging what your choices are. That hit home to me.
Yeah. It made you, it's the first time you actually cared about companions, because your actions affected them, because they were very well written. Like some of those characters, like even now I think about, and like I just absolutely love them. What is the robot that everybody loves? The one that calls everyone meat bags.
Yeah.
He calls human beings meat bags. It's like MK something.
He was in Star Wars Galaxies. They like put him in there. Yeah, it was a big thing when they put him in as an NPC.
He was amazing. Yeah, he's like this mercenary robot who is one of the few characters who doesn't mind when you do some dark side things, because he's just, wants to get the job done, and he calls all humans meatbags, and it's just really funny and really sarcastic, and just always stands out to me as one of the best companions like in an RPG. I don't know, I just really love the game. I've gone back to it a ton of times. Like I've definitely replayed it. I have it on Steam. I just really loved it. But I know you have slightly different feelings.
I don't get it. It's a great RPG, but it's Star Wars is the Galactic Civil War. It's the Empire versus the Rebellion, and Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia and Han Solo. So when you take that and you go, let's set a game 10,000 years before any of that, how do you call that a Star Wars game?
Because it's still in the universe. And that's why I enjoyed it, though,
and
is
this
because
is the example I always turn to, and I mentioned it to you. Would you call a game where Rome is burning a World War II game because it's in the same universe
but you're
as
being
World
too
War II?
literal. That's like the real universe. This is a fictional universe.
To me, that's how it is. It's like, well, sure, they have lightsabers and they have Sith and Jedi, but like, you know, that's like saying, well, they've got swords and they've got human beings, and Star Wars to me is that era.
But I don't think that's fair, because I'm sure a lot of the novels go way before that era and do a good job of explaining that. Yeah, but I'm not saying all of them are good. I'm just saying that you have to, I think expanding the universe, to me, that's what I love the most about the games and the novels that do that. Because for me, as much as I do love the era of the trilogy, I am so fascinated with the universe as a whole that I am fine with playing a game that's 10,000 years in the past, because I think it was well done. I think it was a well-done history of...
It's a fantastic... Oh, you mean of the expansion? No,
yeah.
I don't know. It's sure, but I mean, I don't know. That doesn't ring Star Wars to me. It was like... When
Such an elitist over here.
It's not elitism. It's just like I see certain elements of those movies are what make the movies and make it what it is, and like I don't see any of that in the game.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. Thank you, Rob, for being a part of another one of these.
Yeah.
Top and bottom. I don't know what we're calling it yet. Something fancy.
Best
Something with a long hashtag. If you guys have any thoughts on what your favorite or least favorite Star Wars games are, you can let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, challenge me. Bring it on. Tell me what KOTOR's a good Star Wars game, and I'll tell you why you're wrong.
Or maybe you like the Game Gear Star Wars. I don't know.
I'll tell you why you're wrong.
And if you have any ideas of what you want us to pit against each other, what developers, games, franchises, topics, I mean, like you said, we could even do specific as World War II shooters. Or
Rome Total War is a great World War II shooter.
I hate you. Anyway, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit us up on Twitter. I am IvyWinterYT.
And I'm Rob Plays. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel if you want to see more of our videos. And hey, subscribe to mine too while you're at it.
Thank you for the plug of my channel on my channel.
No problem.
That was great.
I also thought I'd throw in a plug to my channel on your channel.
I think that's completely fair.
Okay.
All right, thanks so much, guys. Bye.
Bye.